Eric Hughes said the following thing to me, and that was that basically RC is about playing to your strength.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another week with the 7 Sage LSAT podcast. I'm Nicole, and today I'm joined by someone very exciting. You guys might have already heard from him in some of his new live classes, but we have Max today. Max, introduce yourself for the people at home.
Hi, everyone. My name is Max. I was an LSAT tutor. Now I am also a live class instructor here at 7 Sage. I am from South Bend, Indiana. At the beginning, we were talking about discussing what my favorite vegetable was. So I guess I'll tell you that's I don't really know what my favorite vegetable is. And now I'm realizing that there's a reason we didn't ask that icebreaker at the beginning anyways. It's super exciting to be here, Nicole. Thanks for having me.
But you didn't tell us a vegetable, though. Like, you can't just tease us with that and not say one.
The problem is I started thinking about it, and then I realized the only thing that I have for vegetable-related questions is what my least favorite is, and it's objectively broccoli. Like, I know that makes me sound like I have the maturity of a really advanced 9-year-old, but objectively, broccoli is the least good vegetable.
False. But that's besides the point. I like broccoli. A nice grilled or oven-baked broccoli with, like, some garlic powder. Anyways, I don't know if I have maybe kale. Kale might be my least favorite.
Kale's a good call. Kale would be a good call, I think. Generally, it would be a good call. Yeah.
Nice. Well, anybody who's worrying right now as they're listening, we're not here to discuss vegetable rankings. We are here, to discuss Max's study journey. So our goal today is to walk through Max's story of how he got, what was your diagnostic and what was your actual score?
My diagnostic was a 162 and my final score was a 176.
Dang, that's a good diagnostic. Solid. Well, let's listen to how Max closed that gap. So walk us through it. Tell us your story.
Okay, I will transport you all to the summer of 2022. I was getting ready to enter
Not the summer of 69?
Unfortunately, I was going to go with the Bryan Adams reference, and then I couldn't commit to the bit. I never commit to the bit, or I overcommit to the bit, but that's beside the point. See the vegetable thing. I was going into my senior year of college in the summer of 2022, and I really thought I was going to go straight through. I was going to do undergrad and go straight through to law school. And to be clear, I was telling a lot of people that this was the plan. like my friends, my family. I was like, guys, I got this LSAT thing. I got it on lock. I got it locked down. And so I take the diagnostic in like May of that summer. And then I study for the better portion of 2-3 months. I didn't really do it the right way. But I was taking, I thought I was doing it the right way. I was drilling. I was doing the question types. I was using services that were, a variety of services, not 7 Sage that time around. I take the test in August, and I don't do the way that I wanted to. I scored exactly at my diagnostic level that time around. I got 162. I did. Yeah, I did that time around. And I was really upset. I was really frustrated, and I felt super I felt super lost. It was one of the first times, and I see this with clients all the time. It's like the first time you've ever hit something that feels like it's just a completely vertical, inscalable wall in front of you, right? That was how I felt. So I decided that I just wanted to put it on the back burner. I started applying for jobs. I started looking. I got a couple of jobs. I got a really cool opportunity to go to London and teach for a year. And then about 6 months into that experience in London, I realized that I really wanted to do this thing the way I felt like I was capable of doing it, right? The thing that bothered me wasn't the fact that the score I'd gotten was bad, right? What I wanted was to do something that I felt like I was capable of, right? And push myself as far as I could go. So in January of 2024, I started studying again, but this time I did it differently. I got the 7 Sage subscription. I went to the live classes, and I was one of the live class people that just sat in the corner, and everyone else is talking, answering questions, and I'm just watching from the corner like a very scared little small animal. I did all of that. I went the whole 9 yards. I took the test in April of 2024. I got my results back, and it was a 176, 14-point increase.
Solid. Okay, so we have big picture. We started maybe not super organized for 2-3 months, scored the same at your diagnostic. Then you took life into its shackles, into its hands, and locked in. And then you got a 14-point increase. Okay, awesome. maybe we can zoom in a little bit. So you talked about how
Okay.
you went to live class, how you
Mm-hmm.
signed up for 7 Sage, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe walk us through a timeline. Like when you got that diagnostic, or when you got that first score back, what was the
Mm-hmm.
first thing you did? Did you go through the whole curriculum, or did you just target certain weaknesses?
So when I got the first score back, what I did was not study for months, right? And
Well,
so
sorry. I
I
mean,
did.
when you decided, yeah.
Yeah. Like I didn't study for almost a year. When I started studying again, the first thing that I did was I took another diagnostic, which, to the surprise of anyone with pattern recognition at this point, was also a 162, right?
So you're very
So
consistent.
I am the king of consistency, Nicole. I'm the king of consistency. I took that, and once I'd taken it, I realized that like I really didn't understand the whole diagramming part of the test. Like I was sort of just eyeballing it. I didn't understand some of the language stuff that was happening. I didn't get it, right? So the first thing that I did was I went through the part of the core curriculum that, like, when I had thought about using 7 Sage the first time around, and I looked, and I was like, there's like 100 hours of curriculum on grammar, right? I
Mm-hmm.
can read books. Why do I need the curriculum on grammar? And it turns out that was
Felt.
actually that was the thing. That was the thing that changed things for me, right? Like once I got through conditional and set logic, the logic of intersecting sets, right? Things changed for me in terms of what I was able to do on the test and how I read questions, and you could kind of feel it happening. As I
Mm-hmm.
did that, I started to incorporate drilling. I started to like think about how to approach it, and I started to take around 1 PT a week. I once I actually understood the conditional logic part, things started to really fall into place for me on the PTs. And then once I got through that, I kind of did something that, looking back on it, was not maybe a great decision, and that was that I registered for the exam before I PT'd at the level I wanted to perform on that exam at. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That was looking back on it, not a great decision, right? But as a result, my timeline was pretty condensed. So what I had to do was kind of work towards the timeline as opposed to working around trying to get the number. So I increased the number of questions I was doing per day. I would do a couple PTs a week. And then when I got closer to the exam, I tapered down. I really only hit the sections of the core curriculum that were or surrounded the things that I really struggled with. So that was a couple LR question types that I really struggled with. I did the whole logic game section of the core curriculum back when logic games was a thing, back in the dark
Mm-hmm.
ages. And then I did most of the RC core because I really struggled with RC when I started.
Hmm. Okay. I like that. And I really like how you highlighted at the beginning how the lessons that feel the most mundane and unnecessary are some of the ones that show you the biggest improvements, like the grammar one. So maybe we
Mm-hmm.
could touch back to that. Maybe do you have some big takeaways, like big things you got from the grammar module that you think other people should look out for? Or something that,
Yeah,
like
I
a tip or a trick that helped you a lot?
Oh, guys, I like to play this party trick when I talk to people about this job, or this work, and I like to say, okay, let's talk about the word or, as it applies in
Hmm.
common conversation versus on this test, right? I say, I went to the beach or I studied, and then I tell people that have never taken this test, have no experience with it. I'm like, let's talk about which of the following situations complies with that statement. I went to the beach or I studied. I tell them I didn't go to the beach and I didn't study. They're like, yeah, that doesn't comply. I'm like, okay. I went to the beach, but I didn't study. They're like, yeah, that complies. You did one thing, but not the other. I'm like, okay. I didn't go to the beach, but I did study. They're like, yeah, that complies. I'm like, okay. I went to the beach and I studied. And they're like, no, because you didn't do either that thing or the other thing. I'm like, nah, but you said either or, right? What I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about is the word or. And on this test, unlike in common conversation, right? The word or is triggered by one event occurring, but the other event, once that event is triggered, becomes meaningless. It can be up or down in switch terms, right? It can be triggered or not triggered, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so when that happens, right, you could logically say that you did in fact go to the beach or study if you did both. And that is not something that my brain was capable of processing when I started. But once I did the section of the core curriculum, I was like, okay, like that's weird and unusual. And it's something that I have to practice.
Solid. Yeah. And for anybody that wants more resources on this, the curriculum section about the inclusive or like group 3 indicators talks a
Yes,
lot about
that.
exactly what Max is mentioning. I think that also relates to something that people don't realize in common dialect, I guess, is the relationship between and or, that those are
Mm,
contrapositives or logical opposites of each other, right? I guess to your example, I went to the beach or I studied. Like the, I guess we could turn it into a conditional statement. I uh, if I don't go to the movies today, then I'm gonna go to the beach or I'm gonna study. And then my contrapositive by way of De Morgan's law would flip, right? So I'd say like, okay, if I didn't go to the beach and I didn't study, that means I must not have been to the movies. So when you flip out loud, that might sound like mishmash to everybody. But when I flip, right, in the contrapositive, the or turns into and vice versa, which is something that doesn't sound very natural to people when you're just talking, but it helps a lot to know those formal grammar rules. Yeah. Any other big grammar thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I won't lie. I don't bring up the or and contrapositive flip when I'm doing this with people, because after I do the or thing, they get really, really upset that they even started the discussion. They're like, why did I even bring this up? Why did I even ask this guy about work? Right? So I do think that grammar thing is something that people like it doesn't matter really how smart you are is the thing. This test, and the way that I describe it to clients, is it's like this test is designed to really challenge the smartest people in the country, right? It is designed that way, right? So to that end, you may be a really smart person, but this is still something that in my experience is new for basically everyone, right? And so it's definitely worth spending time on.
Yeah. And to piggyback off that, the next part of the curriculum that talks about labeling arguments and premises and conclusions, exactly to your point, it's not about intelligence. A lot of people naturally, like you can hear someone talking out loud and you could tell what the point is, what they're trying to persuade you of. But the way these LSAT writers write some arguments, it's intended to be deceptive, to have a bunch of, confusing, like red herrings and stuff. And you can't just rely on your colloquial understanding of listening to somebody talk, right? You have to have some kind of grammatical method or strategy that helps you parse those things out. Like how we talk about doing the why test, right? Figuring out what's a conclusion by asking yourself, why must it be true? Which goes a little bit beyond just listening, like talking back and forth in real life. Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. The why test, especially. Yeah.
What are some things that helped you improve on diagramming, since you talked about how that was really hard to wrap the mind around at first?
So this was a thing that worked for me, and I do think that it's something that is a little bit difficult to teach yourself, because it was really hard for me to teach myself. But once I got it, it was really helpful. Basically, I would consistently struggle with like the definition, the written explanation of what a sufficient condition was and what a necessary condition was. And a lot of that for me was the fact that sufficient felt like a weaker word than necessary. Necessary feels like a really strong word, right? Like it's required, right? And that's true. But sufficient makes you feel like that's like nothing, right? But the sufficient condition is enough all by itself to trigger the necessary condition, right? It's just enough by itself. And so to that end, right, it's really, really strong. What helped me with sufficient and necessaries and determining what side of the arrow to put them on and how to diagram things out was asking myself questions about what I was reading and what I would know if I knew certain conditions were true. Because if I knew something else was true, if I knew a certain condition, then I was pretty sure that original condition was the sufficient. A good example is let's say I got a crazy complicated conditional statement. Let's say I got a statement that was you can win an election only if you're popular, right? That's the statement I was given. In that case, I would say, okay, if I know that I'm popular, do I know that I'm going to win an election? Well, not really, right? I don't know that on the basis of that statement. Okay. What if I know that I'm not? What if I know that I'm not popular, right? Can I win an election? Well, I was just told that I could only win one if I was popular, right? Which means that if I know that I'm not popular, then I can't win an election, right? And all of a sudden, now I've got a conditional. If not popular, then not win election, right? And then you negate both sides, you flip the arrow, right? And that tells you that if you won an election, then that tells me that you're popular, right? And all of a sudden, even if the conditional and the language and the indicators were really confusing, I could sort of suss out how the conditions were interacting with each other and really make headway into diagramming it out in a way that made sense to me.
Yeah, I like that. I think a lot of people maybe struggle at first to memorize the indicator words, and they're like, what do I do if I can't like figure out what group this is? Exactly. So just like rearranging things, thinking about like what are the implications of this sentence. Another one I think people get tripped up on is like the not unless. Like if I say you cannot fly without wings, people start getting like, oh my God, what goes on what side? You could think about it like Max described, like, okay, well, you cannot fly without wings. So if you don't have wings, right? If I'm like a thing without wings, like a human, then I wouldn't be able to fly. So not wings, arrow, can't fly. Or just like he described, like I'd take the contrapositive. In order to fly, it's necessary to have wings. So you don't have to only rely on your group numbers and memorizing them. You can also just parse, like intuitively figure stuff out too. Cool. Did you do a lot of like diagramming practice questions? Like, did you do specific drills for diagramming or just as they came up?
So, you know what? I am the first person to tell you that I think a lot of students and a lot of LSAT takers these days have it a lot harder than I did, because conditional reasoning was something that was so effectively tested by games, right? Like logic games was such an effective test for conditional reasoning that
That's true.
I feel like and I mean, you can tell me if you feel like this has been your experience, but do you feel like you've encountered conditional reasoning less in LR when you were taking the test than now? Because I certainly feel that way. LR is very conditional reasoning heavy now versus at least what I remember taking when I took the test.
Honestly, I might have just blacked that out of my memory. I don't know if I even can compare. But I believe you, though. I believe you. And it's something I see a lot of people in the chat in class actually asking sometimes, is whether or not the like ratio of certain skills, like doing diagramming, has increased now that they've gotten rid of logic games. And I will say, like, we're just giving anecdotal stuff here. I don't know if we have any hard type of numbers, but maybe in a future episode, if you want to drop your questions down below, we can look into stuff like that too.
We will.
So yeah, maybe it has gotten more popular. So you're right. I guess without logic games, you just have to brute force it through the actual LR questions.
Yeah, and so to that end, you know, I would get a lot of the diagramming work in, right, when I was doing games. But I do remember that for the conditional reasoning LR questions, it was a real mental game for me to really force myself to write things out, right? Because this is the other thing. On some level, it is kind of like an issue of like making sure that you keep yourself in check, because you really want to be good at this exam, right? Everyone really wants to be great at this test, right? And when you have to like write things down, sometimes it's easy to feel like, well, I'm not getting it. I shouldn't have to write this down, right? I felt that way. But writing things down is so effective, especially on the conditional reasoning questions. What I would do is I would set myself up with conditional reasoning LR questions, and I would say, I don't care how confident I am in the right answer when I see it. I'm going to diagram this out. I'm going to diagram the answer out. I'm going to prove to myself on paper that this is the right answer before I pick it. And it was something that, even though maybe I didn't do it all the time on the actual exam, it was something that really reinforced the fact, at least to me, that it was okay and important to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people feel like writing is wasting your time. Like the time that you spend writing stuff down on your scratch paper is like inevitably going to be cutting out time you do other stuff. But again, I wouldn't think that's the case at all, because sometimes, as Max described, right, if you write it out and you convince yourself your answer is correct, that helps you avoid those traps. Yeah, you could pick a trap answer super duper quick, but you just lost that point. Do you really want to sacrifice accuracy just so you could get a little bit faster, when that could be the reason why you're missing questions, because you're not writing stuff down?
Yep.
Totally.
Exactly.
I think another big thing you hit on, so we've talked about, I'm trying to like parse out some of the big things you mentioned. So like doing the grammar and the basic stuff, talking about diagramming and sufficiency necessity. You also mentioned that maybe you didn't walk through the whole RC section of the curriculum, but that RC was a weak point for you. What are some things you learned along your journey about how to get better at RC?
So, I'm going to draw from one of our live class instructors, Eric, because Eric said this better than I ever could. Eric Hughes said the following thing to me, and that was that basically RC is about playing to your strengths, right? So if your strength is doing a really in-depth read of the passage the first time and spending less time on the questions on the back end, great. If your strength is getting the big picture of the passage the first time, but making sure that you really need more time with the questions, it's important to play to that, right? For me, here's the thing that I learned about myself doing the RC studying. I realized I'm a details guy. I love and can identify very fine details in passages. I can remember examples and names and metaphors, all of that. I can do that very well. If you asked me to give you the big picture of a passage when I started doing this test, I would not have been able to do it. I would have been
Mm.
very bad at it, probably. So what I ended up doing and what I ended up learning was, first of all, the low res strategy was so effective for me. Like, it is actually, I would say, probably it is top 3 things that Seven Sage like changed for me in terms of what
Hmm.
happened for me study wise, is the idea that, okay, what you need to do is not just focus on what the passage is saying, but how it's getting said and what the point of saying it is. And you need to be able to incorporate that into 1, maybe 2 sentences at the end of every paragraph, right? Going slowly, restating the material like that, right? That was all super, super helpful to me, right? And then I had to
Mm-hmm.
learn a lot of things on, at that point, I had to learn a lot of things on my own about, like, what are the passage subtypes and everything like that. And then I come back and work for the company, and it turns out the RC core curriculum has all been updated, and all of the things that I felt like I discovered on my own are now there. So I think I went through the RC core back when it was like something that I think was still very much under revisement, but now the RC core is really, really good. It reflects a lot of
Mm-hmm.
the things that I think I discovered on my own along the way.
Mm-hmm. So you play to your strength of like you have good memory of
Mm-hmm.
little details,
Mm-hmm.
but you struggle with the big picture. So low res helped
Mm-hmm.
a lot. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
solid. Since we're on the topic of writing stuff down, were you a note taking guy
Oh
during
wow.
RC?
During RC, I
Like
wasn't, and
writing stuff down, I mean.
yeah, yeah, because I was not originally, and then I realized it was the same thing, right? So my LR got better as I started to diagram things out and write things out, right? And my RC was staying very stubbornly in one place, and I was like, "What is happening here, right? What is the reason for this?" And then I had a moment where I basically said to myself, well, maybe I need to try to incorporate some of the LR strategies that I've been learning to
Mm,
use and that have been effective there. Maybe I need to incorporate them on RC. Maybe that would help, right? I like diagramming things out in LR. Obviously, it's rare that you're going to diagram things out in RC, but maybe I need to take notes, right?
mm-hmm.
I basically would write in shorthand at the end of the test. Like, what I would do is I would have the low res on the paper, right?
Mm-hmm.
But to save myself time, I would write it out in as few letters, as few characters as possible, using abbreviations and shorthand that I would remember. Because again, it's not like anybody else is going to read my notes, right?
Yeah.
So that was what I did, and it really helped.
So you have
that was a good decision.
like each paragraph with a shorthand
Yes.
summary.
Yes,
Cool.
exactly. Like, I would have paragraph 1, shorthand summary of like my low res specifically.
Yeah.
And then what I would do is, before main point questions, I would read all 5 of those in a row, and I would say, what's the best way to combine these 5 things, or, however
Ooh.
many there were per paragraph, right? Into something that would be a cogent main point of this argument. And then I would go look at the main points. I wouldn't pre-phrase too hard, because I think that is a
Mhm.
thing on main point questions on RC, pre-phrasing too close to the sun, for lack of a better word. But it is definitely
So real.
something that was helpful. Yeah, no, I know.
That makes sense. Um, speaking of like the categories and types of passages, did you approach anything differently if you noticed like, oh, I recognize this style of passage? Or did you basically tackle them all the same, but it's just like something handy to be able to spot?
I think it was something that I definitely felt like was. I didn't realize that it was going to be actively helpful when I started, but man, it ended up being really, really helpful. Because again, I think a lot of this is prediction, right? The more
Yeah.
effectively you can predict where the passage is going, the better you're going to be able to read the passage if your prediction is successful. To be clear, I think there's a difference between that and, say, predicting the questions that you're going to see on RC, which my personal philosophy is that can often be a self-defeating exercise. But I do think that trying to predict the way that the passage is going to flow can be really important.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And even if maybe not on actual test day, you're not sitting there like, okay, I think the next paragraph is going to say this. But as you're practicing, it helps you build your pattern recognition for sure. Last RC question. I'm like grilling you on random stuff.
I love it. I love it.
Big hot take that I talk to people all the time in my classes about. What order do you do the passages in? Do you have an order, or do you just go 1 through 4?
I go 1, 2, 3, 4. because I didn't realize that going 4-3-2-1 is as effective for a lot of people as it is. I never even tried it, okay? Like I was someone that was like, I will do all of the material in the order to which it is presented to me. I didn't skip questions on LR. Looking back, I probably should have, right? Like there's a lot of places where looking at the suggestions, and this is something you get from tutoring, right? I think like tutoring, I think makes you better at the exam retroactively, right? And so I'm like, wait, going 4-3-2-1 for me probably would have made a lot of sense because I had to really learn to control my time management on those back two passages very consistently throughout studying.
That's interesting. I am the same for LR. I think we did an episode about my journey once too, and I said the same thing, that I never skipped in LR. I just went straight through, and if I didn't finish, I don't finish, and if I do, then I just sit there and twiddle my thumbs for like 4 minutes. For RC though, I did have like a super specific order I went in. Neither 1, 2, 3, 4 nor 4-3-2-1. 4-3-2-1. I would always go first. I did the first passage because I just felt like that would be my warm up. Like, let's say I open the exam and the very first section is RC section. I don't really want to go for the fourth one because I'm like, what if it's like too insane and it fries me right off the bat? So I go for the first one. Then after that, I would go in descending order of number of questions. So like I would do whatever passage has 8 questions or 7 to get maximum points from those ones. Then I'd go to whatever one has like 6-ish, whatever. Then whatever one has like 5, I leave that for the end. So easiest first, then descending order of length. And that way I just felt like I would maximize. Like worst case, if I didn't finish the very last one, I only had like 2 questions left I didn't finish. Although by the time I got to test day, I did finish all 4, but like as I was studying, sometimes of course I wouldn't get through them when they get, really challenging. So I don't know. That was my weird method. I didn't get that from anybody. I just randomly one day was like, I should go reverse question number order. And then I was like, wait, but then what if the first one's really hard? So I'm like, I'll start with a warm up. And from that, my order was born.
That's such an interesting way to approach it. Like I can tell you, I never would have thought about going about it that way. I really do think it is person specific though. Like sometimes 4-3-2-1 like works from a passage order perspective. Sometimes it just doesn't, right? And I think it's so much of the test is doing exactly what you just described, in my opinion. And that is learning how you learn and how you problem solve the best.
Yeah. And some people too, I know, I didn't do this, but some people will like pick what type of passages are their favorite. Like if they hate art, then like leave that for the end. Like do the ones that you seem like you're going to like them the most and save the worst one from the end or something like that. Or, get that one over with first, I guess, so that you're done suffering with it at the beginning. I don't know. The world's everybody's oyster. Takeaway here is just figure out what works for you and try it. Try some different RC sections with some different things.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. What was your least favorite genre, Nicole? Least favorite genre or subgenre category of RC passages?
I don't know. It's a tie between humanities and art. I'm not a humanities girl. I'm not into like philosophy classes or like poli-sci, like me going to law school. I'm like, I don't want to take a poli-sci class or a humanities class. But I'm not into humanities stuff. So I really don't like those passages that are like about books or like research about like literature. It's like the literature ones that really kill me. But like science, law, those are fine. Like I'm okay with that. What about you?
It's really specific, but passages that have to do with agriculture or farming. I don't know why. There's a lot of passages that have to do with agriculture or farming, and like the second it starts talking about like the way that the soil composition is, I'm like, I have lost the plot very significantly. I have lost.
Okay, if we're going that specific, my least favorite. Okay, well, I said kind of specific, like literature stuff, but also the ones that are about the economy. Like market pressures and stuff.
Economics passages. Yes. Those can be. Yeah.
Thumbs down. What's your favorite? Yeah. This is our icebreaker. Instead of vegetables, what's your favorite type of RC passage?
My favorite type of RC passage, I love art. I love the art passages so much. I can think of 2 art passages that were genuinely interesting to me, and one of them is infamous. It's the passage about the Japanese sculpture.
Noguchi?
Yeah, Noguchi. Yeah. Isamu Noguchi. Yeah, I love that passage to death. I think it's great. That one, the one about post-Cultural Revolution Chinese art is so good. I'm an art guy. Like I very famously, when I was a kid, spent like 8 straight hours in the museum in the Met in New York because it was like my favorite thing in the world. So like art passages are my favorite thing in the world. If I could get 4 straight art passages, it would be my favorite section of RC ever. What about you?
Oh, that's so cool. Okay, well, agree to disagree, but I can respect that because that's a good reason. I don't know if I have a a favorite. I think I like the legal ones just because they feel kind of straightforward. Like you start with like your rule, you go into some example cases. My favorite RC passage is the one that's about medical illustrations, like if they should be used in court
it's
or not.
so good. That one
I
is
like that
so
one.
good. Yeah.
But yeah,
No, fully agree with
now
that.
that you guys know our favorite vegetables and our favorite RC passages, send me a gift
Yeah.
package. Okay. So I think that covers like your big three takeaways, right? That helped your journey: grammar, sufficiency, necessity, and then like writing stuff down and low res summarizing RC and whatnot. Maybe we could talk about, give us your little spiel about what are some of the classes you have on the schedule, and what are some of you, what's your pedagogy? What's some of your big things you want to teach other people?
So I do a causal reasoning class Tuesdays in the evening, and I think that my pedagogy generally, when it comes to tutoring or when it comes to stuff that happens, like basically regardless of what it is on this exam, is very much something that I heard but didn't internalize when I was taking the test, and it is something that I really want to emphasize whenever I interact with a client or a student of this test, and it is run your own dang race. Right? This test is very competitive, and a lot of people that generally like get into the mindset of this test are very much associated with a lot of other people that are taking this test, or they have people that know that they're taking this test, right? And there's a lot riding on how they do or how they perform or how you perform relative to how you think you're performing, right? But it's really important that, like, I mean, you know, this is something that a really, really, really good friend of mine says to me, but like comparison is the thief of joy, right? And it is really important that everyone tries to run their own race. It is something that I was uniquely bad at when I took this test, and it is something that I try to give to any student in any classroom that I am working in, is the ability to try to the fullest extent of their ability to run their own race.
That's so valid. I feel like I had a very different journey from a lot of people because I know nobody ever, like, I don't know anybody out of my friends that has ever taken the LSAT or knows what's on the LSAT. When I tell people about my job, I just like, I'm like, yeah, I teach this test that people take, but like, that's the extent of it. So yeah, I feel like I was just inherently running my own race because I just didn't even know this was like a race that people run, you know? So, everybody's different, but that's interesting that like for a lot of people, especially if you already know you're going into law school for your entire undergraduate time, like, you know, you're surrounded by people that are maybe already studying for the LSAT during their junior, senior year, or people, and then you're like, oh my God, what if I haven't started yet? So very true. Run your own race. That's very deep.
Yep.
Love it.
That's my pedagogy. Yep. That's basically it.
That's great. I think that's honestly a very nice uplifting note to end on for everybody. Run your own race, and there are lots of ways to help that race and to suit that race to your own needs, I guess.
Yes, I agree with that, including coming and hanging out with me at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on a Tuesday. It'll be fun.
Yeah, you'll have a lot of fun for sure. So yeah, we hope to catch you guys in some live classes, especially Max's, as you mentioned. Drop on by. And if you have any other questions about Max's journey or anything we talked about today, drop them in the comment section below. And if we answer your question in a future episode, you'll get a free month of live class. So you can hang out with us even more and for free. Otherwise, you know, like, subscribe, and we are excited to bring you another episode next week. We'll see you guys next time. Enjoy your kale and broccoli over the next week. Toodles.